Hey everybody, welcome to another week of Wrestling with Wrestling. I'm here as always with my partner in crime, Doc Gregory, the best damn referee in all of independent wrestling and a mighty fine fellow just in general. Doc, how you doing this week?
I'm doing pretty good, and I'm actually been in practice here for the week of I've been doing like arm exercises. Wait, let me do a couple here. 2, 3, yeah, because I have a big show this Saturday night at the Frankfurt High School. It's Elite Pro Wrestling Alliance. Once again, it is the Grand Prix tournament time. We're having a bunch of stars coming up. Shane Douglas is going to be in the house. The Patriot's going to be in the house. Sanjay Dutt's going to be in the house, as well as the full Elite roster. So it's going to be one hell of a show. Plus, they are promising an announcement this Saturday night that is going to be the biggest announcement ever that Elite Pro Wrestling Alliance has ever made. That's going to rock not only the foundations of Elite Pro Wrestling Alliance, but the whole independent wrestling business around the area.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah, should be good. Should be good. So I don't know what it is. I like to be surprised just like the fans are. So I've just kind of been keeping out of what the news is going to be.
Right. That's cool. Yeah, and once again, as we've mentioned a bunch of times on the show, I mean, if you're a wrestling fan and you're in this general area, the Maryland, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, Virginia sort of four-state area, and you like independent wrestling, Elite Pro Wrestling is a hell of a company, and they put on a good show, so you should look into going to that show. And you get to see Doc referee some wrestling matches.
That's right.
And see how good he is in person. So, obviously, we're going to talk a lot about the Ultimate Warrior this week.
Yeah.
He died the day after his last appearance on Monday Night Raw last week. So we're going to spend a lot.
Yeah, it was hours after, right after we did our broadcast last Tuesday, that the news broke that.
That's right.
We just missed it by a few hours of reporting it ourselves. We've had to wait a full week just to talk about it.
Yeah, it was a big surprise and a very sad story, and we're going to talk about Warrior a lot, but I want to cover Monday Night Raw before we get into the Warrior talk, because obviously Warrior will be our Legend of the Week this week, and there were a lot of retrospective clips about the Warrior on the show last night. It was sort of a half and half, maybe not even half and half, maybe 3/4 and 1/4 of like a regular episode of Raw and also a tribute show. They started out the show with everybody on the stage, the whole roster out, including Vince, who you haven't seen for a while. And Vince didn't say anything. He was just there standing with everybody, which I thought was nice. And they gave Warrior the 10-bell salute and then played what I thought was a really nice video package with a nice song and reliving some of his great moments. And a few lines from that promo that he cut on Raw last week, and then we get into what is basically the next episode of Monday Night Raw. And I thought it was even with or without the Warrior stuff to sort of influence your opinion. I thought it was a pretty decent episode of Raw. I mean, I didn't think it was one of the best ever, but I thought it was pretty good, and there were a lot of things on it that I really liked. What did you think of Raw, just in general?
Yeah, I didn't actually get a chance to watch it last night, but I sat down here. I got home around noon today, and I sat down and for the first time, I just actually watched the whole thing. I didn't skip through any hoopla or even through the commercials. I just sat here and watched all 3 hours of Raw. It did actually keep my attention. I thought that they did some pretty interesting thing announcing the tournament. We'll talk about that, but I love tournaments, so I thought this was really cool. Which is they're featuring a whole bunch of they're featuring some stars in this tournament that you can tell that they're going to be the future because the fans are actually responding to them, like Bad News Barrett. I love that, and we'll talk about that match when it gets here. The 10-bell thing that we talked about, I sat through. I knew what they were doing. I saw the image up on the screen. I saw the video package, heard the song, sat through all of that, and then everything went quiet, and then they announced they were doing the 10-bell salute. And I've over 20 years, I have sat through a ton of these things, and and just talking about it gives me goosebumps. But it's one of those things when you hear that 10 bell, it's like you've lost someone in the business, and it made me tear up, and I'm starting to tear up right now because it does upset me thinking about it.
Yeah.
Because my first experience with the 10 bell salute was my trainer Neil the Power Superior, and the next one was my best friend, Jeremy Sumner, who killed himself. But it's like I lost two of my closest friends in the business, and that was my first experience with the 10 Bell Salute. I think it just brings back bad memories for me hearing it.
Yeah, yeah. If you're, it's like the wrestling version of playing taps. I mean, if you're a longtime wrestling fan, or especially if you're a wrestler yourself, uh, it does bring up a lot of really heavy emotions that someone who maybe isn't as much of a wrestling person might not quite get. But you can sort of compare it in a way to, hearing a song at somebody's funeral, or hearing someone play taps over the during the service of like a fallen service member or something. It's just it brings up like all the other times that you've heard it, and it's kind of heavy if you're a wrestling person to hear that. So let's talk about the show. We'll get back to Warrior in due time, but let's talk about the actual Raw episode. You like tournaments. I like tournaments. I like the idea of having just generally just having a tournament, because I think with a tournament, even if the matches themselves aren't quite as good, just the fact that they're a tournament match kind of ups the interest just automatically. So even if you have two guys going out and just having like a 4-minute TV match that isn't really all that great, it's still kind of interesting because it's in the tournament. There's whoever wins gets to go on to the next round. But I thought the matches in the first round that we had on Raw last night were actually all pretty good.
Yeah, top notch first round matches, and it was good to see in the opening match there. It was good to see Rob Van Dam. He's back for the second week now, and it seems like he hasn't really lost a step. I mean, the fans are still there supporting him, and they've never forgotten him. He's like one of those Daniel Bryan guys. It's like he can do no wrong. He has earned those fans' respect, and it doesn't matter how long he's been gone. They are still going to be there in drones when he walks back through that curtain. It's amazing.
Yeah, and he really is. It really is amazing to think how long he's been wrestling, and he wrestles almost exactly the same style now as he always has.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you see other guys like Jeff Hardy or Rey Mysterio who have sort of had to make their style a little less, a little slower, a little less high impact. But Rob does almost all the same spots he's always done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Rolling Thunder, the Split Moonsault, Frog Splash, the high kicks. Occasionally we get to see the jump from one corner to the other with the drop kick. And but yeah, you're right. He has basically done the same maneuvers the whole time. The moves he does are so phenomenal. They get over so well with the fans. I mean, hey, that's the WWE for you. If it works, that's all you need to do.
Yeah, and I love, and he still sells that frog splash like it hurts him just as much as it hurts the guy taking it, which I always thought was cool. The way he like bounces up off and holds his ribs and then rolls over and I love that whole thing. I think it's one of the coolest ways of doing a splash of anybody, because it really makes it look really well.
He did that really well last night, because I actually was sitting there. I was sitting there watching it this afternoon, and he hits it and he rolls for what I thought was a little bit more of an extended amount of time than he normally does. He usually tries to shimmy up on his feet to get over to the pin, but he took like a little longer. And I'm sitting there yelling at the TV, going, "Come on, already, get on him, pin him, come on!" And I'm like, "Oh my God, I am marking out here."
Yeah. It was a pretty good match, and. So RVD won that one, and he moves on to the next round in the tournament. And it's a tournament, by the way, I don't think we mentioned yet. The tournament is to choose a number one contender to the Intercontinental title. Which, you know what? I like that they're doing it. I think it's good that they're making such a big deal out of crowning a number one contender to the Intercontinental title. I just hope that once the tournament's over and the match at the pay-per-view that this is leading up to is over, that they continue to try and treat the Intercontinental title as something important. They don't just do this for a month and then next month it's, Big E getting pinned in a non-title match to set up the next challenger like they've been doing. A tournament makes the title much stronger than doing it that other way.
Well, yeah, it's true that I do love the fact they're setting up a tournament. I always think, I know it's probably from my experience of watching WrestleMania 4, because the WWF title was on the line at that WrestleMania. So I always think there should be some type of grand prize you should win if you win the tournament, not just, hey, I'm number one contender and we'll go down the road here at the next pay-per-view and I'll get my shot. And when it comes to what belt it should be for, you have it as Big E's Intercontinental title, which, you know, Big E at least has been out there doing single matches with people and putting that belt on the line. I think there's another secondary title that if he wasn't already previously booked for the next pay-per-view, I would love to see Dean Ambrose do something with the United States title. Either WWE should use that title or lose that title. I mean, it's getting to the point where it's ridiculous. I don't know where he's defending it, if he's just defending it on house shows, but it certainly isn't on TV.
Yeah, I agree. They've paid so little attention to it. I mean, if they want to just drop the title, then they should just book Dean in, you know, like a unification match and just have, you know, whether it's Big E or whether it's they put the Intercontinental title on somebody else, you know, and just unify the titles and just call it the Intercontinental title and then just forget about it. It just makes no sense to have the guy carrying a belt around that doesn't get defended and almost a lot of times doesn't even get mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
So it'd been nice if you put Dean Ambrose in this tournament, and then, so you had the United States champion going in there, and then you know, book it where it becomes down between Dean Ambrose wins the tournament and he's going to go against Big E Langston, and then they go back and forth about which title's better and and then they can get rid of one of them, and which I would prefer it to be the United States because it's WWE, so it's the Intercontinental title for me, which makes no sense. I mean, to me, it's the Intercontinental title. And I just never got that concept. I've talked about it before. You know, there's World and there's Intercontinental. How to distinguish between the two. I do like the fact that there's a World and the United States title.
Yeah, that's a little more obvious. You can sort of figure that out, you know. Yeah, it's more immediately apparent. But I guess it's just a cool name to give a title. So then the next match on the show was a tag match with the Rhodes Brothers versus Ryback and Axel. And man, I don't know who Goldust and Cody pissed off, but they lost this clean, I think.
Yeah, very clean.
To Rybaxel. And I mean, do you think that, like, you know, last fall these guys were the big tag team, you know? They were like the hot story in the tag team division. They beat the Shield to get their jobs back, then they won the tag titles. They were all in with like the anti Triple H stuff, and then it's like they just completely got lost in that shuffle, and now it's just like, you know, oh.
Well, they had their payoff. They did, because you had the whole Authority versus the Rhodes family gimmick that happened last year, and that's what kind of united this whole family. And at that time, the story was interesting, it was hot, and they decided to run with it, and they put them on top. But it goes to show you that once things calm down, and I don't think it's Cody Rhodes' fault, but where things lie in the WWE, which honestly, when I watched this matchup, I thought that Goldust and Cody would probably win. I thought that, you know, I'm looking at this and I'm trying to see what I think the outcome should be, and that's the way I'm seeing it is Goldie and them would win. But and when Ryback hits the clothesline and lays him flat out, pins him, I was like, holy crap! And I'm thinking the same thing you did. I was like, man, they've really fallen a long way because Ryback will just beat them.
Yeah, and it wasn't even Ryback's finish; it was the clothesline.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't even get the muscle buster. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what's going on there. It seems like the cynical wrestling fan in me is like, it's just another example of the WWE, like the creative team or Vince or whoever, just like losing interest and just being like, oh yeah, whatever, you know, like Goldust and Cody were hot for a little while and then they just kind of forgot about them, and now they're just two more guys, you know, and they might as well be, you know, Los Matadores. It doesn't make a difference.
What do you know? They'll probably get into an argument here somewhere down the road in the next couple of weeks, and they'll start fighting and feuding,
Yeah.
and we'll finally get to see that Goldust versus Cody Rhodes, but Vince will screw him over and not actually give it to him at WrestleMania, and then
Right.
after that, Cody Rhodes will probably win, and Goldust will once again fade into obscurity, and I see that probably happening before the end of the year.
Yeah. I hope before that they at least have them do a losing streak storyline, because those are always awesome. Nothing gets a wrestler or a tag team over as a hot commodity more than having them lose on TV week after week after week, and having the announcers play up how long it's been since they won a match. That's the best story ever.
Which is why I thought it would play out well like that, because if they're going to keep making them lose and making them look bad, that it would be nice to actually start showing a little animosity or heat within the ranks.
Yeah. Yeah. So and then after that, the next match was actually kind of a pleasant surprise. I thought it was the Divas match, and it was Paige versus Alicia Fox. And I mean, it wasn't a great, an awesome wrestling match, but for a Divas match on Raw, I thought it was pretty good. They actually had like a wrestling match. They weren't just slapping each other or doing hair pulling spots or stuff like that. It seemed like Alicia actually had some heel motivation going in. Like maybe they're doing like Paige is like the rookie who came in and won the title, and now Alicia's like the diva who's been around for a while, who maybe is a little pissed off. And it wasn't a very long match, but I thought it was a pretty good for on the sliding scale of like WWE Divas matches. I didn't think it was that bad.
Yeah, traditionally a Divas match in the WWE or on Raw will go probably about 5 minutes, maybe even less if it's a battle royal. But I'm pleasantly surprised. It does give me hope, because I'm a big fan of female wrestling, women's wrestling, that I'm glad that this new crop of female wrestlers are actually starting to come in, because they have spent time in developmental, and they do have set skills already intact before they come on to national TV like that. And NXT has done a great deal at pushing Paige. She was the first NXT Women's Champion, and she, no matter how she really acted over there, she gained a fan base. And when she came over here to the WWE, I mean, that fan base was following her because, sure, they're watching NXT too. They're wrestling fans, and it's just it's nice to see someone that has great wrestling skill. She's representing that title well. Not saying that AJ didn't, because AJ came in a long, long way from what I originally thought of AJ Lee.
Yeah, absolutely.
I used to call her Street Rat. She was just a ring rat, because she was jumping. She was jumping from guy to guy. I'm like, she's nothing but a ring rat. But yeah, it was really good to see them give us at least 5 minutes of a quality women's wrestling match for once, because you don't get to see that too much. And I do love Paige's finish, because it looks good. I mean, to me it's a finish that looks I'm losing my words here.
Well, it looks. I'm glad you brought it up, because I was going to mention it too. I was just going to mention how that's the first time that the Raw crowd has ever seen it, because she didn't use it last week, and this is only her second match outside of NXT, but the crowd popped for it when they saw when she grabbed Alicia's arms and put like the chicken wing part of it on, and picked her up and stretched her. I mean, you could hear the fans were going, "Yo!" Like they thought that was really cool.
Apparently, it's called the Scorpion Crosslock Submission.
Yeah.
So I guess we need to step up our game and learn what these moves are called.
I think they called it on the commentary. I think they called it the modified Scorpion Crosslock. So I think the logic behind that is that the leg half is the Scorpion Crosslock, and then the modification would be the chicken wing, picking her up and bending her backwards like that.
Well, it's quite interesting, because I'm looking at this still on the WWE website, where you can actually watch, I guess, the highlights of the video. And they got Paige holding Alicia Fox in that crosslock submission, and it is quite a interesting view from this point, because you got nothing but Alicia cleavage. It's pretty good. Go over there to the WWE website and just look at the picture. Don't watch the video. Just look at the picture and go, huh?
That'll get it over more than anything. Once the fans catch on to that, they'll be like, put her in that hole. Yeah, but I thought it was a good match, and yeah, I agree. I think Paige's finish is awesome. I think that's a much better finish for her than the Paige Turner, which is basically just a takedown.
Mm-hmm.
So then the next match is this non-title tag team match with the tag team champions, the Usos, versus Randy Orton and Batista, and this was sort of set up by Triple H. There was a backstage segment before this where Orton and Batista were still pissed off about not getting their title shot at Daniel Bryan, and Daniel Bryan wasn't at the show this week because he actually got married and he's in real life on his honeymoon. So instead of getting their title shot or getting their revenge against Daniel Bryan, Triple H tells Orton and Batista that they can go out and get some revenge on the Usos instead. And the match ended in a DQ after about 4 or 5 minutes when the Shield ran in, and they worked over. They really worked over Batista more than they did Orton.
Mm-hmm.
And then Orton and Batista made their escape. But so it looks like they're sort of redirecting the Shield, the Shield versus Triple H, and also Orton and Batista is definitely going to be like a big thing now.
Oh, sure. That was the plan for Extreme Rules, was to have Evolution minus Ric Flair versus the Shield, and it's been interesting. Yeah, Triple H had him backstage, and he had told them that they have a bigger problem than Daniel Bryan. He understood that they want their championship match, but they have bigger problems with the Shield, and how together they couldn't be stopped as Evolution, that they should join forces. And of course, basically Batista and Randy told him, that's your problem, go shove it.
Right, exactly.
Cool. But then you had the tag team match, and they got disqualified because the Shield came in. So you're pushing that heat anyways. So one way or the other, that match, it's just one of those things that make you think it's not going to happen, but it's that's a story that's being told right now to redirect them into reforming Evolution versus the Shield for Extreme Rising.
Yeah, and I like that story a lot, and I also like where they're going with what looks like is going to be Daniel Bryan's program leading into the next big event, which we'll talk about in a few minutes when we get to that point in the show. But it looks like they're actually not going to do the triple threat rematch. They're going to do, like you said, it'll be Triple H and Orton and Batista versus the Shield, and then Bryan will have something else, which I think is cool. I'm sure that the triple threat rematch will be a good match, but it's sort of an obvious booking decision. It's a little more creative to try to, now that WrestleMania is over, instead of redoing WrestleMania, to kind of move people in different directions.
Well, if I was Randy Orton, damn it, I'd be asking for my title rematch. It was my belt, and I want my rematch.
That's true, and he didn't even lose it. He wasn't even involved in the finish.
Nope.
So they're going to have to get back around to that at some point. I don't know. Maybe they'll make a bigger deal of that coming up over the summer. So then Paul Heyman comes out. This is the next segment. Paul Heyman comes out, and he once again cuts a heel promo about Brock beating the streak, complete with pictures. And then, same thing as last week, he brings out Cesaro, and people are cheering for him again. So and this week was even weirder because Brock wasn't even there. It's like he comes out all by himself and reminds everybody that Brock beat The Undertaker and acts like a complete heel prick, and then he brings out Cesaro, who everybody likes.
Well, I was reading a blog by one of my wrestling friends named John Kerman, that he was posting about the very possible rumor that WWE is finally going to abandon the whole heel versus face gimmick.
Yeah.
And just allow fans to like who they want to like, and just let wrestlers act how they want to act. And if you like them, you like them. You don't, you don't. If you like that asshole, go ahead and cheer for him.
Yeah,
that would be nice. It would be nice. It gives to me wrestlers genuine personalities, that you, not just they're taking one side or the other.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because it makes it less cartoony.
Hmm.
And if they do want to do if they do want to make this different than it has been in the past, like if I mean they've mentioned Triple H mentioned the reality era like a month ago, and they've mentioned that one or two times in the commentary since then. So I don't know if they're going to actually try to get that over as like a name for the current era of wrestling, if they're going to try to get people to call it the reality era. Uh, but you could almost also call it the postmodern era, because the fans, like the fans just cheer for what they like, and they don't really care who's a face or who's a heel. I mean, it's, and if you watch NXT, it's really like that. Like the NXT audience almost pays no attention at all to who's supposed to be a face and who's supposed to be a heel. They cheer for the people they think are cool and they think are good, and they boo for the stuff that they don't like.
Yeah, that's the
So
thing. I mean, wrestling, the curtain's been lifted. So when you see someone like Fandango out there dancing up a storm, you're familiar with his past and who he is, and he's out there just playing a gimmick along, and that you realize that's just his role. It has nothing to do with his ability in the ring, and fans are growing up that way, of seeing it that way. They're just looking straight through the gimmicks because they know that that's just an act. Like uh, there are a few that do get over, like the Wyatt family.
yeah,
That's only because he proves that gimmick. He lives that gimmick. He had absorbed that gimmick, and that's, to me, who he is now on TV. He has really, except for Husky Harris when the Tough Enough tryouts, really has. I haven't seen him do anything else but Bray Wyatt. So that's
yeah,
all I've seen him do, and to me, that's who his character is.
yeah. And I mean, he, it's not like Husky Harris was that left that much of an impression anyway. So it was, yeah, he pretty much is Bray Wyatt. Um,
But back to the match we were
yeah,
talking about.
yeah,
We got, Paul Heyman came out, cuts the promo like you said. I love that. He's like, let me repeat it, Brock Lesnar beat the streak. Brock Lesnar beat the streak. And I'm like,
yeah,
and that is just time and time again Paul Heyman proving how valuable he is in this business for anybody. Cesaro, I think he could do a good job on the mic, but not in a way that Paul Heyman would be able to get him over. It's almost like Cesaro was already getting that push, but to put him over the top, he's going to need to have good mic skills, which he's okay. So let's just put him with Paul Heyman, and the fans already love him, so they're not going to switch allegiances just because he's not acting any different. I mean, he's
right.
still going out there and wrestling hard matches. He's not cheating. They put him up against the world's strongest man. You got today's modern Superman against the world's strongest man, and he did an incredible job against Mark Henry, and he gave him his finish, which didn't quite get it all the way up there, but it was effective. I don't think I've seen the big swing either. He didn't do the big swing on Mark Henry.
No, no. But yeah, I mean, having Heyman with Cesaro, I do think it's good for Cesaro, not just because Heyman is a great talker, but also it sort of elevates Cesaro, because Paul Heyman is being openly referred to on the commentary now as the greatest manager of all time, and having a Paul Heyman guy is like kind of a thing now. And unlike
Yeah, that's the thing. That's the catchphrase now. I mean, I've seen so many T-shirts, people wearing the T-shirts. I'm a Paul Heyman guy.
yeah,
It's a popular thing. Best manager of all time. Sure, if you say it enough, it's gonna be true. But for all of us who have been around and see through that bullshit, who know the history of wrestling, we all know that it was Bobby the Brain Heyman.
oh sure, oh of course, and I mean, and in real life, Paul Heyman himself would tell you that.
Yeah.
I mean, I think almost everybody thinks it's Heenan, and rightly so. I think it is too.
And secondary would be Freddie Blassie.
Oh, Freddie Blassie, yes, I love Freddie Blassie.
Ah, you pencil neck geek!
Oh man,
I'll
Freddie
make a time bag out of you.
yeah, no, Freddie Blassie was amazing. But so Cesaro being the new Paul Heyman guy, like unlike with Curtis Axel, Cesaro has the skills and the personality and the charisma to actually pull it off. Where like you can look at Cesaro and think, oh, of course Paul Heyman would want to manage this guy. Like this guy's going to be a huge star. You know, um,
It's
I
the
just I,
acquirement. It's the acquirement of Bam Bam Bigelow back in the day. Remember when all the managers were fighting over him to try
yeah.
to acquire Bam Bam Bigelow's services, and he just told them all to go fuck themselves and hired Oliver Humperdinck instead.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, it's almost like that. It's like I would love to see managers do that. They're bargaining for people's contracts, you know.
Yo, yeah, I would love to see more managers just in general. Yeah, and so well, speaking of managers, it's sort of a manager, a valet, I guess. The next match after the Cesaro match, Cesaro beat Mark Henry to move on in the tournament. The next match is an Alexander Rusev match, and it was Rusev versus Xavier Woods, so it's sort of like an NXT match because both guys are recent NXT graduates and they still work the NXT tapings. And before Rusev comes out, his manager, Lana, the ravishing Russian, once again introduced as such. And I think this time she even got her own music and like her
Nice.
own entrance video. She came out to introduce Alexander Rusev.
Well, Stephanie McMahon always says we all have entrance music. That's just the one thing. We all have entrance music. And man, does she have legs that go on forever. I have not seen better legs on a woman since Stacy Keibler. And she
Yeah.
has some nice legs that went all the way up and made an ass out of themselves, I'll tell you. But Lana, Lana is drop dead beautiful. If she can stay just in that role and not ever wrestle, which if she has wrestling ability, that's fine. But if she can just stay in those business suits like that and represent, oh, that's just sexy. I don't need to see any more than that to have sex appeal in a woman. I mean, that's all you need to show to prove that you are sexy. You don't need to get in any skimpy outfits or any bathing suits like that.
Yeah.
Alexander Rusev comes out. I like that he's just that big football linebacker Russian guy, and pretty much destroyed Xavier Woods. And then on top of that, R-Truth got in his face, and it took Lana twice to tell him to crush him. For
I
him
noticed
to
that.
finally get it. It's like he missed his cue.
He missed his cue, yeah.
And finally he heard it and they went over and beat him. And you could see that R-Truth was over in the corner waiting. He was
Yeah.
expecting it.
Yeah. Like, you coming or not? Come on.
Whoops! Botchelmania! Botchelmania!
Yeah, but and I like Rusev. I like the way he moves in the ring. I appreciate guys. I want everybody sort of a lot of fans on the internet like to bitch about, and it's not completely unfair. The way all the guys are trained to work the same way, and they are. I mean, the styles from one wrestler to another are not all that different. But when a guy can come up with a way of making it at least cosmetically different, like the way Rusev moves in the ring, the way he has sort of like a martial arts like Muay Thai stance where he holds his hands up like this, and when he blocks or when he throws punches or throws forearms, he has his hands up and open, and then nobody else does that, and it just makes him look unique.
I like the way he hauls his trunks up like he's 90 years old. But no, a testament to a great wrestler here. This is what I like about Rusev. I have done wrestling for a long time, and when it comes to how much punishment and pain you can take in that ring, I'm a pussy. I wrap my wrist, I put elbow pads on, I got knee pads, I wrap my feet, I got wrestling boots to support my ankles. This man, and if you look at him, no wrist tape, no arm pads, no knee pads, doesn't even have boots. He has tape wrapped around him, which is traditional for any fighter to wrap tape around your ankles. It gives you support. But the man has no protection from this canvas, and it is a canvas. And if you've ever slid knee first across a wrestling canvas without any knee pads on, you have just been cut open big time. It's like a massive carpet burn. It's not an easy slide. So this man goes out there, and that's what I liked about Cody Rhodes from the beginning. But then I found out that was just kind of a rib on him. That's why he didn't wear any knee pads. But yeah, I love the fact that he wears no protection out there in the ring but he hasn't really had to take too many bumps yet. We'll see.
Yeah, no, they're really giving him like the initial sort of like kind of a little bit like they did with Ryback at first. He just goes out and just murders people, which is good. I think that's what they should do. I think that's how a guy like that gets over. That's all they did with Ryback.
just as long as they keep him speaking no English whatsoever,
Yeah,
because as soon as Ryback opened his mouth, right down the toilet he went.
right. Yeah, a guy like Rusev doesn't have to talk.
Yeah.
I mean, you can have Lana cut short promos for him if you have to, but I mean,
And,
he'll be most impressive in the ring.
and she don't even need to have to talk. She just stand there and mumble anything. Goes, damn, I'd watch her anyways.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. She doesn't have to be cutting like 10-minute promos for Rusev. Having her speak in a Russian accent, I think, is enough. She's not even Russian. I think she's from Florida.
I haven't done any background checks.
I'm
with her,
pretty sure
so.
she's from Florida. So yeah.
In my imagination, she's Lana to me. I'd rather
Yeah.
keep that. I'd rather keep that vision of her.
Yeah, don't look too much into it. Just save the dream for yourself. Yeah. So moving on, we had the next match in the first round of the Intercontinental #1 Contenders Tournament, and it was Jack Swagger versus Sheamus. And this match surprised me because they didn't go with the obvious booking. You would think that they would have Swagger go over here to set up a match in the tournament with Cesaro, and they didn't. Sheamus actually won this match.
That's exactly the way I saw it happening when I saw that both of them were in the brackets that they would push where they would face off against one another. Because to me, I'm invested in that because they just split up. I want to see kind of that story play out a little bit.
Yeah.
But obviously they're not going to go that direction, at least not right now. And it was an interesting matchup. And I thought that Jack Swagger somehow would get the victory. Hell, I mean, WWE's been surprising the hell out of me lately on just things that I didn't expect to go that way. So it'd have been interesting to see them finally give Jack Swagger the push, but Sheamus is the guy doing Kmart commercials, so of course we're gonna put Sheamus over. He's the Great White Hope.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. Yeah, I don't think I don't really see Sheamus winning the tournament, but I was surprised that Sheamus went over there because I mean, yeah, the obvious way to go with that is to have the finals be Cesaro versus Swagger, but they didn't do that. But which is kind of nice. I like them doing unexpected things. If it doesn't feel like they're doing it just to throw a curveball, I mean, sometimes they do things, they do unexpected things, and it feels like they're just doing it because people don't expect it.
Right.
There's no real reason to do it other than to fool people, and that they do that. They don't do it as much as they used to, but they used to do that kind of shit all the time. It was really, really irritating.
I kind of hope they do something with Jack Swagger, though. I just don't want to see him.
I hope so too.
He had a good following. Yes, it helped that Cesaro was getting over like a house on fire. But Jack was part of that team. I think that you could at least use some of that steam coming off that team to give him that push. And this isn't a good start.
Well, the thing about Swagger is Swagger's good, but I mean, and Swagger is also sort of a casualty of that very short era from maybe 4 or 5, 6 years ago, before they kind of settled down their world title booking, where they were just putting the world title, and sometimes even the WWE title, they were just putting that title on everybody. I mean, Sheamus won the WWE title like within a month or so of being moved to Raw, and Jack Swagger won the world title, Dolph Ziggler won the world title, and you have all these guys who weren't really established as like main event level guys winning the world title or even the WWE title. And then they lost the title, and they kind of went back down into the mid-card. So you have, like, the mid-card is full of these former world champions who now don't really mean anything.
Yeah, they're on a big Ferris wheel that comes around, and everybody at the top wins the world title. But right now, the Ferris wheel's kind of stopped, and Jack Swagger just can't seem to get back up there.
Yeah.
That was the way that was at the time. It was just like everybody, okay, now let's put Sheamus up there. Okay, now let's put Alberto Del Rio up there. Let's make everybody a viable star that they could possibly go back and win the world title. And you hear that in every single commentating when it comes to matches. Former world heavyweight champion. We got 3 or 4 different world heavyweight champions in this tournament. And I was like, well, what the fuck are they doing in the tournament then?
Yeah, it's it makes things more complicated now because now it seems like they're making an effort to settle things down and to not do that so much. But it's like now we have, like you just said, an Intercontinental title #1 contender tournament. It's not even for the title. It's just for a shot at the title. and half the guys in it are former world champions.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but that's sort of just the bed that they made for themselves. I mean, I'm not going to complain too much because I like the tournament. I like the idea of it. I like trying to make the Intercontinental title seem like it means something.
The sad part about this whole thing is none of those former world champions are going to win this tournament.
Yeah.
We know it, you know it, I know it, and the people know it. That who's going to win that? We know who's going to win that tournament. We know who's hot right now.
Yeah. Yeah. We the people do know who's going to win that tournament.
We the people do.
Hopefully. When we've been going through as I've been reviewing Raw with you, I've been skipping most of the backstage stuff and the talking segments and just going straight to the matches. But there is this one segment that I want to talk about, and it's it was in the ring, but it was just like a promo. It was Damien Sandow in the ring after a commercial break, and he's just kind of cutting us a random promo on the fans about how unappreciated he is and how he should be bigger. He should be a bigger star, and you know, people should pay more attention to him and recognize his greatness. And he just kind of goes on for a minute or two, and then Big Show comes out, and he jaws at Big Show for a few more minutes, and then Big Show just punches him in the head and knocks him out.
That was a great KO. I mean, if that was the only spot I was going to see out of Damien Sandow, then it was perfect because I love to hear that man speak. And if he didn't have to wrestle, I mean, that's as a worker, what an easy freaking night that is. I just go out there and get the fans riled up and get knocked out. Big Show, you got it, no big deal. But the way he took that knockout punch, it was very authentic. I loved that bump he took. I mean, I had to watch it 3 or 4 more times just to watch him get knocked out. It was great.
Yeah, I thought. I mean, it was well performed. And I think Sandow is great. I mean, I think he's a good talker. I think he's a good worker, and I agree with you. I think the way he took that punch it made it look really awesome. The only thing that bothered me about it, and the thing that I thought was weird about it, was, and maybe they'll prove me wrong in the next couple of weeks, but it felt like they were just putting him out there, and it wasn't really going anywhere. I mean, maybe he'll feud with Big Show over this now. I'm not sure. But I'll tell you what it reminded me of, and maybe I'm off base on this, and maybe they're not going this way at all, and they actually have a plan for Sandow, and I hope that's true. But it reminded me of those segments on WCW Monday Nitro back in the day, when they would just send a guy out with a microphone to talk, like they did it with Chris Jericho, they did it with Eddie Guerrero a few times, where they would just send him out to cut a promo on something, and it never went anywhere. Mm-hmm. He wasn't feuding with anybody. It didn't set up a match. It was just sending a guy out. And usually it was a guy like Jericho or Guerrero who either had been complaining themselves or people were talking about as being underused. And they would and instead of giving them something meaningful to do, they would just send them out and say, okay, there you go. We got a 3-hour show anyway. Just go ahead and talk for 5 minutes. Just go out and cut a promo about something. And it felt a little bit like that. You know, because they haven't really done much with Sandow since he lost the Money in the Bank cash-in, when he cashed in on Cena and lost that match. He hasn't really done very much, and it felt a little bit like that. And I hope they at least have something for Sandow to do coming out of this. I hope it wasn't just sending a guy to the ring with a microphone and say, okay, just go cut a promo about, how badly you're being used. So, I don't know.
I think Damien Sandow's just in that rut right now. That if you could tweet, he has that potential. He truly does. I don't know if there's something going on that we're not aware of that keeps him down at the bottom of this totem pole. But the man, to me, has stage presence. He has wrestling ability. He has a great beard. He has great speaking ability when it comes to the English language. I mean, it far exceeds mine. It far exudes my ability to speak.
Yeah, I think Sandow's great. I mean, I wish they would do more with him than they have done, and hopefully they will. I mean, I think we talked about it last week. I mean, they're not as stupid as a lot of times internet wrestling fans seem to think they are. People in the company know that Damien Sandow is worth it. They know that he's good. They know that he can talk. They know that he can work. It's just a matter of waiting for them to find that right spot for him. and hopefully they'll find that spot because he's just terrific. He's just terrific.
You can just find some
So
way to
then,
get him over. Get him over with the fans. Just got to find some niche to get him over with the fans.
yeah. What next was next was that Cena and Wyatt's thing, which that segment was weird because that segment it had me, and then it lost me, and then it got me again at the end.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like it started out with Bray cutting a promo, and his promo was great, like it usually is. And then Cena came out and did all of the fucking Photoshop, like, jokey humor stuff, which I don't usually like, and didn't really work because it was Cena, taking something that was like a really serious, heavy program and making it into a joke. But then it got me back when Bray called him out on it.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, Cena, you're doing what you always do. You're making everything into a joke. Whenever somebody comes up and gets in your face, all you can do is make jokes. And at that point, they kind of got me back, and I saw that that's what they were doing. And it ended up with Cena challenging Bray to a rematch at Extreme Rules in a steel cage.
Steel cage.
What did you think of that?
Steel cage. That's going to be awesome, but you're going to see outside interference in that match. I think that they wanted, in order to get this promo over, that's what Cena did was be that guy who plays the jokes and shows the goofy ass pictures up on the screen. Because in my mind, you were scared of Bray Wyatt, and just because you beat him at WrestleMania doesn't mean that he's still not a threat. He's still coming after you. You had that one moment and you overcame that moment, but doesn't mean that it's over. The war is still going on. Why are you not still slightly afraid, and why are you playing these games now? Now all of a sudden I'm not afraid of Bray Wyatt because I just got a 3 count on him. He didn't beat my ass through the whole thing.
Yeah, and I think you're probably right about the there'll be outside interference in the cage match because when you think about it, they've kind of completely forgotten what the original justification for a cage match was. I mean, the original justification for having a steel cage match, the gimmick meant that the two guys were in the ring and they couldn't get out and nobody could get in.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's the kind of match you would book if there had been a lot of interference in the matches leading up to it. Like, if, let's just say, Ric Flair and Dusty Rhodes and the Horsemen keep running in and interfering. So Dusty says, Ric Flair, you meet me in a steel cage, baby. We'll settle this once and for all, daddy. And the point is that now they're in a cage and the Horsemen can't get in, And they've completely killed that. Like, now they have cage matches where people run in all the time. And it's like the whole point of the cage is just like so they can just, beat each other's heads into the cage. Like the cage is just a weapon. The original point of the gimmick is completely gone. But it'll still probably be a decent match. I mean, nothing.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I think the easiest cage was the big blue bar cage back in the WWF days.
Oh,
man.
yes.
That thing's just too easy to climb. I mean, let's face it. If you got a big hole in the top of the cage, then you're not really saying that nobody can get out and nobody can get in.
Right.
And if the cage top is covered, well, everybody and their brother seems to have the key to the door, or the referee does, and you just knock him out and take the key from there. I mean, you really aren't preventing anybody from going in and coming out of the cage, Especially coming out of the cage. That's what you want.
Right. For years, it never bothered me, and then I started watching, like, cage matches from the NWA, where they usually didn't have the escape rule. Because I would watch, like those big blue steel cage matches in WWF, where one of the ways to win was just get out of the cage, and that never struck me as unusual until I watched cage matches from other territories, where it was, you have to pin the guy or make him submit, and it wasn't whoever gets out of the cage first, and I thought, yeah, that is kind of weird that like you can win the cage match in the WWF by being the first guy to successfully run away,
Yeah.
But I understand why they did. I mean, there are certain spots you can do. that you can only do if that's a possible finish. Like if you know, if you can't do, you know, whoever escapes the cage first is the winner, then you can't have like the race where both guys are trying to climb out at the same time. And that's, I mean, that finish alone is enough of a justification to book it that way, to say, well, whoever gets out of the cage first can win.
Yeah, a cage match is basically for two things: very violent, bloody matches, which should happen if you're in a cage. Someone should freaking bleed. It's a cage match. And number two, intense high spots off the top of the cage. That's other than that, it's a wrestling match. That really hinders you because you can't use the outside of the ring.
Right. Right. But yeah, I like a good cage match, and I think Cena and Bray can have a good. I think they had a pretty good match at WrestleMania, and I think they'll have a good cage match too. And I'm looking forward to another month of Bray Wyatt vicious promos against John Cena. That should be cool too. So the next match on Raw was another mixed tag match. You've been having these mixed tag matches a lot with Santino and Emma. And this week it was Santino and Emma versus Fandango and his new valet, Layla. Fandango broke up with Summer Rae on Twitter.
Yeah.
I don't think they even did it on TV at all. I think it was just, they mentioned it on TV, but the actual dumping was done completely on Twitter.
What an asshole.
Yeah.
He's a fandasshole.
Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, it gives. I've read on the internet over the last couple months that they've had, you know, they really want to push Summer Rae at some point. So maybe breaking her off from Fandango now, you know, that way they can have her as her own person, and then they can just go ahead and, you know, put Layla with Fandango, because it gives Layla something to do, because she's just been kind of floating around since she came back. So I don't really have a problem with it. It just feels kind of weird and sudden, you know, like, oh shit, oh by the way, Fandango dumped Summer Rae.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Now let's cover this really quick before they go out here and wrestle. Even though you saw it, you know, I think they did it on Friday Night SmackDown, which I don't really watch SmackDown because it's not live. But I think that it was announced on SmackDown. I think he did something with Layla there, but Layla looked good though. I mean, she certainly. Sure. She certainly can shake her, took us around. But yeah, you're right. They don't have anything to do with her. Michelle McCool is occupied, and they can't do Le Cool anymore. So Layla is just one of the other 30,000 women they don't know what to do with.
Yeah, and Layla actually gets the pin in this match, and then which they then use to say, well, see, she's already helping Fandango out more than Summer Rae ever did. So I don't know. Maybe Summer Rae aligns herself with another superstar, or maybe they just completely forget about it and they don't even do anything, and they just say, Fandango is with Layla now. Who knows? So then there was the other backstage segment I want to talk about, because it has to do with like storyline implications. They have a backstage angle with Steph talking to Kane, and interesting blocking in the scene. Kane is sitting down on the couch, and Steph is like looming over him, and like, you know, giving him the riot act, yelling at him because he's been such. She says, "Me and Triple H hired you as director of operations because we thought you had no moral code," which I thought was funny when you imagine, like, you know, the leaders, the executives of a corporation hiring a guy for an important position because they thought he had no moral code.
You know, Thompson, when I hired you 2 years ago, I expected you to embezzle the shit out of us. But you didn't come up to their satisfaction, so you're fired.
Right. Like, you're not immoral enough. You know, but she's bitching at him because he's failed to take out Daniel Bryan. And it ends with Kane getting to his feet and sort of, you know, bucking up to Steph's badgering. And then he turns to that glass case where they've kept his Kane mask ever since he took it off, and he takes it out of the case and he picks up the Kane mask. So I guess not only are we going to get Daniel Bryan versus Kane as Bryan's first title defense program, but Kane's going to put the mask back on, which, I mean, he's taken it off and put it back on so many times at this point, I really don't think it matters, but it will at least make for a nice visual, because that's how Kane looked when he and Bryan were partners. And the way they kind of teased it before WrestleMania, I actually think that fans would really be interested in that program. I'm kind of glad they decided to go with Kane versus Daniel Bryan, because I think if they do that right, that could be a really successful feud.
Mm-hmm. I can only imagine if that mask was underneath that glass box for all this time, the smell that came out of that thing once he lifted the glass off of it. Because wrestlers, for the most part, they'll tell you, for the most part, the masks are one thing that you don't wash very, especially that one. What, it was made out of leather or something like that? How do you wash it? How do you wash that thing? You have to like get the pledge out and polish it.
Yeah,
but it looks huge. I mean, is his head really that big? I saw that mask in the case. I was like, is his head really going to fit in that thing? It looked huge.
It did. It looked ridiculous. I have no idea. But yeah, so I guess, and then they didn't do anything else with that. Like that was the last we saw Kane. Kane didn't come back out with the mask. I guess they're saving that for next week, which I like. You know, they're building it slowly, and I guess when Bryan presumably will be back next week, and then they can do it next week. Oh, and I wanted also to mention they've been doing these promos, these video packages for Bo Dallas that I think are just hilarious, that I just love. Where he does voiceover over like stock footage of like exteriors of like rolling hillsides or people going back and forth, doing their job or whatever, and he gives all these just dopey inspirational messages, like like the today is a gift, that's why they call it the present. And then it always ends with him saying, you just have to believe. I just think that's awesome. I love the Bo Dallas thing. I think that
I completely missed it. I completely missed the Bo Dallas promos.
Yeah,
I didn't miss the Adam Rose ones though. Adam Rose were great.
They're doing Adam Rose. Yeah, they're bringing him up too. Yeah, that Adam Rose.
There was one where the Easter Bunny, they were playing Hungry Hungry Hippo, which I loved that. And I guess Adam Rose beat him. He was like, oh, don't feel bad because it's party time. And I'm like, oh, that's just great.
It's hilarious.
It's funny to the point that the only thing that I don't like about Adam Rose is the way he throws his arms backwards and prances around the ring. And that's about the only quarrel I have with the man. Other than that, the gimmick is great and his look is great, and I welcome him into the WWE family.
Yeah, and I think that gimmick is going to be a big hit. I mean, just the entrance alone is going to get people to be interested in him. You can sing along with the song and do the dance, and he has that spot that he does on NXT where he falls back off the apron and they catch him.
Mm-hmm.
Like whoever came up with that deserves a raise. So then the next match is the last tournament match for this show, and it's Dolph Ziggler versus Bad News Barrett, who actually gets to wrestle now, which is nice to see them actually putting Barrett back in the ring. He wrestled last week and he wrestles this week, and he had a pretty good match with Dolph, and he won.
Yep, had some bad news for Dolph. He wasn't winning. But right. Now you heard the Bad News Barrett chants out in the crowd, like I talked about earlier. You had that moment where he went right to the damn ring ropes and was like, bad news, bad news, bad news. I was like, what are you trying to do there? I mean, that didn't look right. It was nice to see the fans kind of take the initiative. He really shouldn't. Not right now. Don't push yourself over as babyface. Just act yourself.
Right. Yeah, let the people do it, Well, and plus also, I mean, he is still technically a heel. I mean, we talk about how maybe they're moving away from the face versus heel thing, and how the fans just are starting to cheer for whatever they like anyway, and they don't care. But it is still a little weird to see a guy who is like, I mean, Bad News Barrett is obviously a heel. I mean, he comes out and he cuts these promos where he talks shit about the audience. Most of the time the bad news is that they're a bunch of losers. So he's clearly a heel, and then to have him in the ring trying to start up his own chant. I mean, maybe the logic is he's just that big of an asshole.
Oh yeah, I took it that way. That maybe he was just kind of goating him. It's like, oh, why don't you chant for me? Bad news. Bad news. I heard you out there. Bad news. Bad news. Yeah. I got some bad news for you. You're all a bunch of tweaks. And poof does.
Poof does. Yeah. use the British homophobic slurs so people won't recognize it. I don't even know what that is. So Wade wins the tournament, so he advances. Um, and then we get to the main event, and the main event has been announced previously as the Shield in a six-man tag versus somebody. They never announced who their opponents were. So the Shield comes out for their match, and then it turns out it's not a six-man tag. It's what ends up being an 11-on-3 handicap match. I have the list of all their opponents here. It was the Shield versus Alberto Del Rio, Jack Swagger, Fandango, all three members of 3MB, Titus O'Neil, Curtis Axel, Ryback, Alexander Rusev, and Bad News Barrett. And the heel side of the ring was kind of funny to see because like, all these guys are crowded around the corner for an 11-man team to take on the three members of the Shield. And it winds up not being much of a match because they do some things in the ring for a few minutes, and then Roman Reigns spears Ryback on the outside, and it just breaks down into a crazy brawl, and it ends up with like I guess just a disqualification or a no contest.
Yeah, they rule it a no contest. I thought it was overkill. Honestly, it's like and there were moments where the Shield's getting over on 11 guys. And
Yeah.
yes, three of them are 3MB. I understand that, and and two of them had wrestled this evening. I think Ryback was out there too. They wrestled as well. So the other ones had wrestled already for the evening, so they were tired. So I guess I can take that into consideration. But it was more than 11 man. I mean, because the beatdown came from the 11, and then sure enough, three more come waltzing down to the ring for an extended beatdown upon the Shield. And we saw Batista lay out the bomb. We saw an awkward moment where Batista was putting the Batista bomb on. I guess Randy Orton was going to try to drop a neck drop. It just was not fluid enough. It didn't look right. You shouldn't go for that anymore. I thought he was going to go for the RKO.
Yeah.
It's the wrong angle for that. When I saw him setting it up, I was like, that's what's going to happen. This is going to be pretty cool. And then, when they played it out, I'm like, nah, that wasn't as cool as I thought it would be.
Yeah, it's sort of exactly. It's like he's doing a reverse neck breaker because it's the guy taking it is facing the wrong way for it to be an RKO. He's landing on his back instead of on his stomach. And of course, when Triple H and Orton and Batista came out, they came out as Evolution with the Evolution entrance video and the music. So it's not just the three guys who were in Evolution working together. Now it's like they're officially saying Evolution is back together. And which I actually thought that was kind of cool. I mean, I'm not always a big fan of them going back and bringing back old gimmicks. A lot of times I think it's just for nostalgia, like when DX came back the last time. I just didn't really get into that too much. But this time I think it could work because it's the three big workers in Evolution. Ric Flair wasn't out there, but it's Triple H and Orton and Batista. And they're against the Shield, who are the young up-and-coming guys who have been booked really strong the whole time they've been in. So it feels like an even match, And I don't know. I mean, I think one of my favorite, I think maybe my favorite period in Triple H's career was the Evolution period. I mean, I think that was probably him at his best, at least as a gimmick, as a character. So I'm all for it. I mean, I think it could turn out to be pretty good, and I'm glad that they're doing that six-man tag match at the pay-per-view instead of like just going right back to the rematch from WrestleMania.
Well, you got the Shield, who is obviously getting over at this point. So who really can you put against them? You got a three-man tag team here. Who are you going to put against them to go? You already did Kane and the Outlaws, and none of the other three-person teams, which I can't think of too many besides the Wyatt. You did that one, which I thought that was a great feud, but we moved on from there. So
Yeah.
I mean, really, where else can you go to have these three work together? Which the team is strong right now, so obviously they're not going to go the way of the breakup with them. But who do you put up against them? You just literally they reform Revolution. I think it's good. I think it's a good move myself, because you got three guys who are feeling the same way and the same of what happened at WrestleMania, and they have a common goal at this point, and they're doing it out of necessity. Not really because they want to, but because they need to. But it should be interesting.
And yeah, and it's like they've done that 6-man tag match with the Shield on pay-per-view so many times that it's they're sort of getting to the bottom of the well, and it feels like bringing Evolution back as a unit is sort of the last and the biggest version of that they can do, because Batista just came back. Batista and Orton just main evented WrestleMania. Triple H, has been promoted as like basically God, is like, Triple H, he's the greatest ever, so having those three guys be the three to challenge the Shield, I mean, it makes it feel like they're not just doing the Shield versus three more guys. It really feels important. It really feels interesting. And I mean, maybe it's the fact that they had Cesaro win the Battle Royal, they had Bryan win the world title, but it feels like they've really finally sort of come around to pushing the new guys, pushing the younger guys. And what better way to finally, establish the Shield once and for all as, as three of the leaders of the next generation of guys, than to put them against Evolution and have them look strong and go over Evolution.
But are they ready? Are they ready?
Have they paid their dues?
No, I'm saying, is Triple H, Randy Orton, and Batista ready to actually lose a second pay-per-view match in a row? I mean, Triple H loses 2 in a row? Come on.
Yeah, well, maybe. You know what?
Are they willing to do that?
Maybe Evolution wins the first one just, so they look strong for the rematch. That's like the Triple H logic. Well, we have to win this one.
What do we have next? SummerSlam after Extreme Rules? SummerSlam?
Yeah.
Yeah, I could see that happening. I definitely could see maybe Evolution fucking them over, at least, getting in the moral victory, getting that moral victory going, and then do a more intense Extreme match or something at SummerSlam. That would be interesting. Yeah,
well, I saw something on some of the dirt sheet websites this week that some people are saying that the plan, one of the planned SummerSlam matches is Triple H versus Roman Reigns in a singles match.
That would work. That would work.
So yeah. So that was Raw. I thought it was a pretty good show. I didn't think it wasn't quite as exciting as last week's Raw, but I thought it was a good show, and I love the tournament, and I love moving toward Daniel Bryan versus Kane. I think that could be an interesting. That's a good like placeholder program for Bryan.
Is this the longest he's held a title in the WWE?
Yes. He's held the title for like a whole week.
It's only because he wasn't on TV. That's it.
Yeah, exactly.
If he was on TV, he'd have lost that belt.
Triple H would have beat him for it. By the way, you're dropping the title to me tonight. So let's talk about the Ultimate Warrior.
Sure.
Because even though he had a very sad end, and even though there's a lot of things about Warrior the person that we could talk about that I probably wouldn't say very nice things about him, I think overall as a wrestler and as a memory as a wrestler, I think pretty much everybody has been saying just really positive things, that he's a positive memory that people have, especially people who were of a younger age when he was big. Like it's most people who have talked about like when he beat Hulk Hogan at WrestleMania 6, even if you were like a Hogan mark at the time, you look back now and you think, yeah, that was pretty special,
Yeah, I thought that his win over Hogan at WrestleMania 6 was really cool because I was a heel follower. That's who I followed. I wasn't a huge fan of the Ultimate Warrior, not as a wrestler. I wasn't even a fan of him after wrestling or his YouTube videos or anything like that. But to me, it's one of those things that I don't look at someone's outside life of the business and reflect that back on their work rate inside the business. You know, like I hate Hulk Hogan. He holds a lot of wrestlers down, but you know, Hulk Hogan did kind of make the business.
Right. Yeah, he was Hulk Hogan. Yeah.
But Warrior, yeah, he passed away just hours after our broadcast, or passed away. The news broke that he passed away hours after our broadcast last week, and the news came in that it was a cardiovascular disease that was killing him. It was a heart attack, which is a shame. You know, the man was a workhorse. He had an incredible physique. He trained every single day. He had admitted, honestly, in court trials back in the 90s against Vince McMahon about steroid use back in the day, so that's not something you can ignore. But that's many, 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 many years ago. But, you know, that stuff can do reputable damage to your system, honestly. I'm not trying to pull an Nancy Grace here, because Nancy Grace was way out of freaking line.
Or she didn't even know what she was talking about.
Right. To speculate on, and then to throw names up on the screen of people who didn't even die really in shady ways was a shame. And people have been posting that she owes an apology to the WWE for all that crap she did. But anyways, let me get back to honoring our true legend of this week, which is, as we all know him, as Warrior. And legally, he is known as the Warrior. But he was born James Bryan Hellwig on June 16th, 1959. He was an American professional wrestler who wrestled mostly famous under the ring name The Ultimate Warrior. He was best known for his appearances in the World Wrestling Federation from 1987 to 1991, and again from 1992 and 1996, as well as his stint in World Championship Wrestling in 1998. While in the WWF, he became a two-time WWE WWF Intercontinental Champion and won the WWF Championship when he pinned Hulk Hogan in the main event at WrestleMania 6, making him the only wrestler in the history of the company to hold both the WWF Championship and the Intercontinental Championship at the same time. In 1993, Hellwig legally changed his name to Warrior, which is also the last name of his wife and children. Warrior retired from professional wrestling in 1998 and embarked on a public speaking career, but wrestled one final match in Spain in 2008. Warrior died on April 8th of 2014 at the age of 54. Over the preceding 3 days, he had been inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame and appeared at WrestleMania 30 and made his final public appearance at Raw, which I thought was almost eerie because they used his speech verbatim during his tribute speech about men breathing their last breath.
Yeah.
And I thought that the irony of that speech and his death it just kind of goes hand in hand. It was almost fitting. It's like he wrapped everything up that needed to be done before he died, which I thought was creepy. My grandfather did really the same thing. He paid off all the bills, all the credit cards, paid off the house, and when everything was paid off, he just got up and died. Almost a day right after everything was completed. I thought that to me was his system, something telling him, I guess the human body knows when something's wrong. And when I review the video again of Ultimate Warrior speaking last Monday, I'm watching him. I'm watching him more carefully and seeing, how he's acting and how he's breathing. A lot of people are saying he didn't look right. I thought he looked just fine. It was just something I never really saw coming. And as much as I didn't care for the Ultimate Warrior, I respect that a ton of wrestling fans did care for the Ultimate Warrior. My brother included. He was a big Ultimate Warrior fan. And I don't dismiss what the man has done in this business. He has a rich wrestling history going all the way back to teaming up with who just signed with the WWE, and it's a shame because he's not going to be working with Jim Hellwig again. He's not going to be working with The Undertaker again. But it's a shame that yes, he used to be teamed up with Sting as the Blade Runners back in the day. So it's like I've been following Jim for a long time. He was actually trained by a friend of mine, Rick Bassman, who you may know as also a personal trainer of John Cena. So the man's been in the business for a while.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's amazing when you think about how like that the Blade Runners team has sort of become legendary, even because both guys eventually broke off and became huge stars on their own. But really, as a team, they really weren't that big of a deal. I
Mm-mm.
mean, they were only together for a really short time. They never wrestled as the Blade Runners like in a major company. But both those guys, like one of them ended up being Sting, and one of them ended up being the Ultimate Warrior, and it's just one of those things where it's like, wow, who would have thought? You know, like did anybody when those guys broke in? I think in Memphis was their first
Mm-hmm.
big territory. Did anybody think when those guys came in and started in Memphis that these would end up being two of the biggest stars in the business in the 1990s?
Yeah,
Um,
they were bodybuilders. They met each
yeah,
other in a gym. You know? But that's something we should talk about next week. I mean, what's the deal there? Sting's coming.
yeah. I wonder what they're going to do with him. I mean, he's getting up there in years, but he still has a few decent matches left in him. You would
Yeah.
think.
Hell
I
yeah. I mean, when
mean,
it comes to WWE matches, that man can work a match.
yeah.
Absolutely. Still got it in him to work a WWE style match.
Oh yeah. Well, and when you look back, like just look back at some of the matches Hogan had uh, in his latest stages of WWE, like before he pretty much retired from the ring for good. Like the matches he had with Randy Orton or with Shawn Michaels. I mean, they weren't great matches, but they were watchable. Like they were good. They were decent. And if Hogan could do that in as rough shape as he was, you would think Sting, at least, if you put him in there with the right guy, could give you a pretty good match. Especially if it's like a part-time thing, like they book him for one big match a year or something like that. Um, yeah, so yeah, unfortunately, right after the Ultimate Warrior died, Sting finally, after all these years, signed with WWE. Um, the thing I want to say about the Warrior is because I mean, he was never my favorite guy. I'm not gonna say that like he was my favorite guy now that he's dead because he never was. Uh, but I always was entertained by him. And when I sort of came back to wrestling as an adult after not really paying a lot of attention to it in my later teen years and my early adult years, looking back at that old Ultimate Warrior stuff was so much fun because I mean everybody talks about like the crazy promos that he would cut and he would just kind of go off in these incoherent rants talking about like the gods above and waving his arms around and his eyes bugging out. But every once in a while he would cut a more coherent promo that showed that he actually, if he concentrated, and really put some effort into it, he could actually cut like what would be considered like a traditionally good promo. I mentioned on this show a few weeks ago, a month ago or so, when we were talking about Ted DiBiase as our Legend of the Week, how Warrior worked with Ted leading up to a Saturday night's main event when Warrior was the WWF champion in 1990, and Warrior cut a promo before his match with DiBiase that was just excellent. That wasn't like the ranting and raving, pumping his arms promo that we usually associate with the Warrior. He was very calm. He was looking right at the camera. He was talking to Ted DiBiase, talking to him about how you say every man has his price, but and then he took off the title belt and he held up the title belt and he said, I have this, and you cannot put a price on this. You cannot buy it, and yet it came to me at great sacrifice. And I mean, and it was just a great promo. Everybody talks about how he was kind of a shitty wrestler, and he would get blown up right away, and he got over by having short matches. But every once in a while, if he was in there with the right guy, he could have a really good match. I mean, he had 2 years in a row, in my opinion, two WrestleManias in a row, he was in the best match on the card. WrestleMania 6 against Hogan and WrestleMania 7 against Macho Man in the retirement match. Especially that one. I mean, I think the Hogan Warrior match, it's good for like what a great moment it was. I think as a match, it's not always that great. But the Hogan or the Warrior versus Macho Man match at WrestleMania 7 is one of my favorite matches. I just think it's terrific, and the drama of it and the finish. And I mean, obviously, we remember it more for Macho Man than for Warrior. But Warrior held held up his end, and he cut another good promo on the Macho Man before that match. Like he could turn it on and really be good if he was working with the right guy and if he was motivated. So he kind of gets the short end of the stick.
Yeah,
on that
yeah,
side.
and to me, they made a video years ago that destruction of the Ultimate Warrior,
Hmm.
and then to see the package put together on Monday and have a guy who's making fun of him on one DVD crediting him on live television, it says like you're contradicting yourself a little bit, and you're wondering if that attitude has changed. Certainly, it has. Certainly, things like that can happen. I've had heat with wrestlers, or maybe thought somebody wasn't, but then come around eventually, and we respect one another. So things like that happen. I mean, we've certainly seen relationships repaired between like Ultimate Warrior, between Bruno Sammartino. We've seen it
Oh
time
yeah.
and time again. So the only thing I can say about the WWE right now is the times they are a changing, and I'm happy about
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, that's something else the Triple H can be proud of because I mean I talk about NXT as being Triple H's big accomplishment and that will be his legacy in the company, not so much even not even so much his work as a wrestler, but the fact that he built NXT into such a great thing. But he's also the guy who brought Bruno in and got Bruno and Vince to talk and put Bruno in the Hall of Fame. He mended fences between the company and Ultimate Warrior. I mean, these are two guys. Bruno and the Warrior are two guys who 2 or 3 years ago, I mean, they were involved in lawsuits. They wouldn't even meet with Vince McMahon. They wouldn't even. You would never imagine that they would be, being in the Hall of Fame and showing up at shows and, you know, and
Now,
now.
now Triple H can pull off Larry Zbyszko and Jim Cornette. That would be fucking magic.
Oh, can you imagine? Jim Cornette would be worth it just to hear the Hall of Fame speech.
Does not Jim Cornette belong in the Hall of Fame? I
Oh,
don't think
absolutely.
it will never ever happen.
Yeah, I don't
Oh,
think it'll. I don't think it'll happen, but Jim Cornette definitely belongs in there, and so does the Midnight Express. By the way, I mean, I'm not. I can't imagine that since they've started inducting guys who weren't primarily WWF guys. I mean, I can't imagine it's been this long and they haven't put in the Midnight Express. I mean, those guys. I mean, one of the greatest tag teams ever. Um,
okay, what was worse for you? We're talking about
okay.
the Ultimate Warrior.
Yeah.
Was it his possession of voodoo by Papa Shango, or was his appearing ghostly in mirrors to Hulk Hogan over in WCW?
Oh
What
man,
was the dumbest thing he did?
the dumbest thing. I think the dumbest was probably the mirror thing.
Yeah.
The thing that made that dumb was the way they played it, and I have no idea why they did this, but they played it so that Hogan could see the Warrior, and we watching TV could see the Warrior, but Eric Bischoff couldn't see him.
Yeah.
It's like, what are you trying to do? Like Hogan sees him, the camera sees him, so we can see him, but what? Other people who are there at the arena can't see it. It was just stupid. I was like, what are you talking about?
Now, what was your coolest moment for the Ultimate Warrior?
It's. I mean, him winning the belt from Hogan was cool, but I loved when he won the Intercontinental title the first time from Honky Tonk Man too. When he came out as like the surprise opponent, and Honky's been champion for almost a year and a half at this point.
I know.
And Warrior just comes out and just squashes him and beats him in like 30 seconds.
Quickly. I actually had time during a pee to rewatch that match, and it made me cry. But one of the best things I liked, I think story-wise, was when he went up against the Undertaker, and they locked him in the casket on I think it was it Brother Love Show, or was it?
It was the funeral parlor.
Funeral parlor, that's it.
Yeah.
And he was in there, and you see that he had been trying to claw his way out, and the whole inside was torn up. So I thought that storyline went really well. It was the only time I was actually interested in an Ultimate Warrior storyline.
Oh, and I loved the vignettes he did with Jake the Snake.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, because I mean that's one of those things where like I remember it watching it as a kid and thinking it was cool, and then I watch it now and I think it's funny. I think it's just so corny that but it has that great payoff where Jake like locks him in the room with all those snakes and he gets bit by a cobra and then like breaks the door down. And then Jake is standing over him, and this is where Jake turns heel, you know, and because he had been a babyface, he was going to help the Warrior understand the Undertaker, and then he ends up turning on him and locking him in a room full of snakes, and the Undertaker comes walking in to see the Warrior, and Jake looks at Warrior laying down on the ground, and then he looks over at the Undertaker, and he says, "And that is how the devils work. It's done." I just love that moment.
Man.
One of my favorite Jake moments.
You got like a mind like a sponge, dude. I tell you, just remember all that.
Oh,
Let me see if this shows up. You know, I just want the picture of the Ultimate Warrior there for everybody. So
yeah,
not the best picture of everybody, but you know, that's our Legend of the Week, and I want to pay respect to a man who did a lot in this business and made a lot of people happy.
Absolutely, and too bad that he had to go out that way.
Yeah.
But yeah, and it just goes
in your face, Nancy Grace, you fucking bitch.
Yeah, you know.
Why get angry, damn it?
It's still real to me, damn it.
Oh my! It's been a sad week for wrestling. It has, but it's been a good week for wrestling as well, and definitely a light is on for the future.
There you go. Well, on that note, let's wrap this baby up for another week. I think that's a good way to end it. A sad week, but a week with some hope.
Mm-hmm.
You know. So that's it for this week, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. Doc and I will be back next week to talk about next week's episode of Raw. Maybe we'll talk some NXT. We'll talk about the build-up to Extreme Rules coming up, which I keep calling a pay-per-view. Apparently, they're not going to call them pay-per-views anymore. They're going to be called special events.
Ah, yes.
Because they're on the network now as well as on pay-per-view. So, but anyway, so that'll be next week. So, thanks for watching, everybody. Doc, I'll catch you next week, buddy.
I'm Tom Bodett, and I'll leave a light on for you.
See you, everybody.